Hello and welcome to the Ohana Developmental Homes Transportation Policy Training video. During this video, we will go over general policy reminders. We will provide some clarification on what Ohana is responsible for and what a company driver is responsible for. We will go over our policy on personal use of company vehicles. We will review expectations for vehicle maintenance, expectations for company driver qualifications. We'll go over some tips for emergency preparedness when you're driving a company vehicle. We will review Ohana's policy on boarding and exiting company vehicles. In addition to that, we will go over expectations for arriving at destinations when you're transporting a member. We'll go over expectations of training for company drivers. And lastly, we will go over some reminders for defensive driving. So before we dive too deep into the company policy on transportation, let's just go over some general reminders. First, it's important to obey all traffic laws. This means speed limit. This means stopping at red lights, stopping at stop signs, using your blinker, and just being courteous towards other drivers on the road as well. It's very important to remember when you drive a company vehicle, you aren't just representing yourself and looking out for your own safety. You are representing Ohana, a company, and looking out for the safety of yourself and any of the vulnerable members that you might be transporting as well. So we never want to encourage anyone to tailgate in a company vehicle or brake check in a company vehicle. Be courteous towards other drivers on the road. Second, it's important to document all driving expenses. This means if you take a vehicle to a scheduled maintenance, if you fill up the tank with gas, you are expected to keep those receipts so we can document them at the end of the month. Third, you need to monitor the gas, tire pressure, and fluid levels of the vehicle. So if a check engine light comes on, if an oil change light comes on, if the gas needs to be filled up, these are things we're responsible for not only monitoring, but taking action on as well. So if you notice any of those things, you need to report it to a supervisor or take the initiative and fill up the tank yourself or fill up the tire pressure yourself. Fourth, report any damage or problems to your assigned vehicle immediately. It's very important if you notice the steering wheel start to shake or something unusual happening with the company vehicle that you report it immediately. Again, we want to make sure that our vehicles are safe, and you guys play a very important role in that. Fifth, report any changes in your driver privileges. So if your license has been suspended, you need to report that immediately. Again, we want to make sure that you're being safe, but we also want to look after the members that we care for and make sure that they are safe as well. So if your license has been suspended, reach out to your supervisor, let them know, and we'll have to work out something with the driving schedule. Sixth, always lock company cars. This means even if you park it at the home, in the driveway, if you're running in for an errand with members, always lock the vehicle. Again, you can do what you want with your personal vehicle, but this is something where we are representing a company, and so if the company's items get stolen because it's unlocked, it's not good news for you, it's not good news for anyone involved in that situation, especially if the members' items get stolen during that. So just make sure you're playing it safe and you're locking company cars. Seventh, bring the vehicle to scheduled maintenance appointments. This one's very important. If a manager asks you to take a van to Amco or Firestone or Walmart for an oil change, it's not just a recommendation, it's something that needs to be taken seriously. We want to keep our vans in good shape so we can get the most life out of them as we can. Eighth, do not drive while intoxicated, fatigued, or on medication that affects your driving ability. Again, if we're driving vulnerable people around, we want to make sure that they're in good hands, and we want to make sure that we're keeping them safe. So obviously, if you're intoxicated, fatigued, or on a medication that you should not be driving on, go ahead and don't drive that day. Ninth, do not smoke in any company vehicle. This is just out of being courteous for those around you. So you don't want to have other people in a position where they need to breathe in secondhand smoke. We all know that smoke Smell lingers in places. We don't want our company vehicles smelling like cigarettes or anything like that. So go ahead and don't smoke in any company vehicle. 10th, do not lease, sell, or lend a company vehicle. This is one that we have not had to deal with yet at the time that I'm recording this video. But again, it's not your personal vehicle that you can do with what you want. This is the company's vehicle. This is Ohana's vehicle. Don't sell it. Don't lend it to someone. This is Ohana's vehicle, so only our qualified and registered drivers should be driving them. Number 11, do not use a phone or text while driving. As of 2019, this is a state law. It's not just a recommendation. You need to not use a phone, not text while you're behind the wheel, especially, again, while you're driving a vulnerable population around. Lastly, number 12, do not allow unauthorized drivers to use the company vehicle unless required by an emergency. And I'm going to add in there and approved by your supervisor. It's very important that we only let authorized drivers drive the company vehicles. If they are authorized drivers, they are covered under the insurance. In the very worst case where something does happen, will be covered. But if an unauthorized driver drives the company vehicle, in worst case scenario something happens, they will not be covered by the insurance, and that's obviously a big expense for Ohana to cover. Now that we've made it through the general reminders, let's go a little bit deeper into the policy and talk about what Ohana is responsible for with company vehicles and what we are not responsible for. So the first thing that we are responsible for with company vehicles is ensuring vehicles are safe before we assign them. So you will never have a manager or a program manager come by a house and say, hey, here's your new van. The brake pads don't work, but I'm sure you guys will figure it out. That's something that wouldn't happen. We make sure that all of our vehicles are safe before we assign them, that the brakes work, the AC works, the transmission is firing okay. If it's not, it's something that we need to schedule regular maintenance to make sure it is repaired. So the next one down there, scheduling regular maintenance. This is something we do with all of our vans to make sure that they're being looked after and are in good health, that they're getting regular oil changes, that the brake pads are being replaced as needed. This helps protect not only you as a driver, but the people that we care for as well as passengers. Third, we are responsible for providing car insurance for each of our vans. We want to make sure that all you guys are set up to succeed, even in the worst case situation. If you are to be pulled over or are in an accident, all of our vans have current car insurance, and it is Ohana's responsibility to provide that. Lastly, it is our responsibility to retire and replace cars as needed. So kind of a worst case scenario, if a van is to be in need of a repair that is very expensive or be totaled for whatever reason, it is our responsibility to retire and replace that car as needed. So now that we've covered things that Ohana is responsible for, let's go ahead and talk about things that we are not responsible for. So first, we are not responsible for paying fines that employees receive while driving company vehicles if it's something that the employee is responsible for. So this could mean speeding, this could mean running a red light, parking in the wrong parking spot, parking a handicap if you do not have the proper tags for that. Anything that you receive a fine for that is not Ohana's fault, they will not pay for. Second, making bail for employees who are arrested while driving cars from the company fleet. So if you are behind the wheel and you're engaging in any type of criminal activity, whether that's criminal speeding, driving while you're intoxicated, anything like that, Ohana is not responsible for making your bail. Now that we've gone over what Ohana is responsible for and what Ohana is not responsible for in terms of company vehicles, let's go over the company policy on personal use of vehicles. So Ohana Developmental Homes does not allow personal use of company vehicles. Personal use includes using the vehicle for personal errands between business activities, using the vehicle to commute between the workplace and home, or using the vehicle outside of business hours. So if you are off shift and just using the vehicle to run some personal errands, this is a clear violation of the company policy. If it's a slow day at the home and you want to take the van over to Walmart to pick up some groceries for your own personal house, this is a clear violation of the company policy on personal use. Employees who violate company vehicle rules are subject to disciplinary actions, which may include verbal and written warnings, suspension of vehicle privileges, termination, and possible legal action. So to set up everyone at Ohana for success, it's very important that we as an agency stay on top of our current registration, plates, and insurance renewal. This is something that the house managers and the administrative staff work on together. But the bottom lines are notifications from ADOT for renewal of registration and the insurance company for vehicle insurance are responded to by the agency administration designee within 7 days of receipt. So whenever we get a notice that it's time to renew, within 7 days, we reply to those. Secondly, registration and insurance renewals will be placed in the vehicles no less than 7 days before expiration. So we will never have you guys set up in a situation where you are driving around with expired registration or invalid insurance. It's something that, again, we stay on top of, and we want to make sure we're setting up everyone for success in that area. Third, site managers or house managers complete monthly inspections of the home that include a review of the interior and exterior of the site vehicles, so the house vans. Administration will be notified 30 days before the registration, plate, and/or the insurance expires. Let's talk about ongoing vehicle maintenance for a little bit. So the agency administration designee is responsible for taking vehicles for routine maintenance as determined by the vehicle's maintenance schedule. So when the oil light comes on, we're responsible for taking it in for an oil change. If an engine light comes on, we're responsible for taking it in to get that checked out. Secondly, the agency administration designee is responsible for taking vehicles for emergency maintenance within 48 hours or 2 days of notification. That's why it's very important if you notice something wrong with the company vehicle that you speak up, because then we have that 2-day timeline to work with, taking it in and getting it fixed as soon as we can. In the meantime, alternative transportation will be arranged as needed. You may have been a part of this before, where if one house is borrowing another house's van for a temporary amount of time while we figure out what's wrong with a certain van, this is an example of that policy in action. Third, and it was read on the previous slide, site managers complete monthly inspections of the home that include a review of the site vehicles or the house vans. Administration will be notified immediately of any identified issues, whether it be a flat tire, leaking oil, anything like that. Administration needs to be notified. It's very important, before you transport any members in a company vehicle, you will complete a 360 inspection of the vehicle to note any damage to the body or obstacles. So if you're doing a 360 of the van before you drive it each time, that's the best time to look for any damages that might have occurred before you got behind the wheel. It's a great way to keep yourself kind of in check and make sure you're following the policies and procedures before you get in the driver's seat. Do a quick 360 of the van. B, ensure the heat and air conditioning is functioning properly. In Arizona, obviously, this is very important to make sure the AC is working properly, and if it's not, we need to arrange to get that fixed and get you guys a new van in the meantime that you can drive with properly working air conditioning. C, ensure all lights, so this means the brake lights, the turn signals, and the headlamps are functioning. If you're driving at night, this is especially important, but it is important at all times. We want to make sure that all of our vans have working brake lights, turn signals, and headlamps. Lastly, all vehicle inspections and maintenance records will be kept at the administration office for the life of the vehicle and tracked for continuing issues. If you are watching this video, chances are that you are a company driver and you have met these necessary qualifications to be a driver for Ohana Developmental Homes. First, all employees driving agency vehicles will meet the following qualifications. You must be at least 21 years old. You must provide a copy of the front and back of a valid driver's license. And lastly, you must provide a clean 39-month driving record at the time of initial hire. Second, employees using personal vehicles for member transportation. And this is a last case scenario type of thing. First, it must be approved by management before use. It's not something that you ask for forgiveness for afterwards. You need to ask for approval beforehand. B, only be done in emergency situations when an agency vehicle is not available. So it's not something you do because someone wants to go see a movie at a certain time and the company vehicle is out picking up groceries. That's not an emergency. C, you will meet all of the requirements listed above under number 1. D, provide the agency with a copy of current vehicle liability insurance and e-registration as well. So if you are using a personal vehicle for transportation, after it's approved by a manager, after it's an emergency as well, you also need to have these things turned in to the manager. So that's your insurance and your registration as well. And F, obviously, even if you're driving your own personal vehicle, you need to follow all policies and procedures that we're going over in this training for transportation. Third, Ohana Developmental Homes Human Resource Department will check driving records of all employees responsible for transporting members annually. So annually, we do a check of everyone's driving records and make sure that we are all still qualified to be a company driver. Let's briefly touch on what to do if you're driving a company van and an emergency is to occur. So what do you do if you get a flat tire, if the vehicle stalls, if you get in an accident, if the steering wheel locks up, something like that? These are the steps that you need to make sure you're following and some things that you should have in place before you leave. So 1, all staff members transporting members will ensure a working cell phone is available. So obviously you don't want to be on your phone while you're driving, but it is important that you have a working cell phone available to you in the case of an emergency. Second, each agency vehicle will be equipped with a first aid kit that meets DHS and DDD requirements. If you do not know the location of the first aid kit in the company van, you need to ask your manager and they will show you where it is. 3, each agency vehicle will be equipped with a flashlight. In the case that an emergency happens at night, obviously it's good to have a flashlight on hand. 4, you may have noticed water bottles in company vehicles. Hopefully they're still sealed and they're not just trash. But water bottles should be kept in the company vehicle for all members and staff. So if something does happen and response time from whoever is going to go pick them up is delayed, we need to have water on hand in the meantime. 5, in case of an emergency, and if there is no company vehicle, staff may use their own vehicle. So if you're at the house and the house is burning down or something along those lines and you need to get away from it, whatever the case may be, staff may use their own vehicle but must follow all policies and procedures that we talked about on that previous slide of the company vehicle. 6, each vehicle has a list of emergency phone numbers for the agency. Before leaving on transport, staff will ensure all items are present. And number 7, this is the last one, if the event of an emergency occurs, here are the action steps you need to take. First, you need to make sure that all the members are safe and uninjured. If you need to call 911 and make sure that you're attending to the needs of the members. So if someone is unsafe or if someone is injured, you need to call 911 and make sure they get the medical care that they need. After that, once it's identified that all members are safe, you need to call the agency emergency number to get further instructions. Lastly, the agency will complete an incident report for all emergency events involving members and then submit them to the DDD within the time frame prescribed in the qualified vendor agreement. So after an incident occurs in a vehicle, whether it's an accident or a flat tire, you need to make sure you're completing an incident report, sending it to your house manager before the end of your shift. On these next two slides, we are going to be talking about the processes for boarding vehicles and for exiting vehicles. Specifically on this slide, we will be talking about the process for boarding vehicles. So each Ohana developmental home has a designated area for boarding and exiting the vehicle. Typically this is in the garage or driveway, but more frequently it is in the driveway of the home. So when you are boarding and exiting the vehicle at a setting such as schools or DTAs, staff will use the designated drop-off and pickup area. This means if there is a designated area away from the home, you're using that. You're not just parking in the back of the parking lot and asking the member to walk. We're remaining consistent and we're using these designated areas. In the case that we are dropping off at a place without a designated drop-off or pickup area, staff will locate an area that will provide necessary accommodations that will allow for safe boarding and exiting. So we're not pulling a van into a tight parking spot in between two cars that are parked in kind of odd places. We're looking for a place that's safe and easy to board and exit the vehicle. When members are boarding the vehicle, there are a few steps you need to take. So before they get on the vehicle, you need to do a quick seat check and make sure that you are removing any obstacles that would prohibit a safe entry. So if something is left on the seat, maybe something heavy, maybe something that's just getting in the way of them sitting down safely, you need to make sure that you remove that before you board people onto the vehicle. After that, any members that need assistance getting on or off of the vehicle need to be provided that assistance. You can find people's specific needs within their individualized needs in their binders or their ISP. If one staff is completing the transport, they must ensure all members have boarded the vehicle before boarding themselves. So you don't get in the vehicle first and then hope that everyone gets in safely. You need to be the last one in the vehicle, making sure that everyone gets on safely. If more than one staff is completing the transport, at least one staff needs to remain outside of the vehicle until everyone has boarded. Once all staff have boarded the vehicle, which means all members will have boarded as well, a seatbelt check needs to be completed to ensure all passengers have a secured seatbelt. In the case that we are providing transportation for a member that uses a wheelchair, there are a couple more steps that we need to follow. So first, if the member is able to be in transport without sitting in their wheelchair, a staff must assist them into the vehicle by transferring them per the needs identified in their ISP. After that, we need to move their wheelchair into the trunk and secure it in the van. If we are providing transportation for a member who needs to sit in their wheelchair, the steps we need to follow are use the wheelchair lift to board the member into the vehicle, secure the wheelchair with tie downs, engage the wheelchair brakes, and secure the member to the floor mounted seat belts. So the member should be sitting within their wheelchair and their wheelchair will be secured with the floor mounted seat belts. Now that we understand the policy for boarding vehicles, let's talk about exiting vehicles. So when members are exiting the vehicle, we need to ensure any obstacles that can prohibit a safe exit are removed. So let's say you have just pulled into a parking spot and there's a truck next to you that looks like it's going to start moving. Maybe it's backing out of a spot, maybe it's pulling forward into the parking lot. We need to make sure that that obstacle is out of the way before the members and yourself exit the van. After that, any members that require assistance need to be provided that assistance per their ISP. Before you start closing the doors, you need to make sure you do a seat check and make sure that all members have left the vehicle. Once you and the member have arrived safely at the destination, we're going to talk about documentation of that, and we're going to talk about how to make sure that they've entered the destination successfully. Before you leave for a transport, staff need to prepare a list of what members will be in the vehicle and what members will be entering the destination. When you have arrived at the destination, if a member is able to independently enter the destination, staff will keep the destination entry and the member in sight until the member has entered the destination. You need to watch them enter the destination. You can't have them exit the vehicle and then pull out from the parking lot before you see them enter the destination. If a member needs assistance entering the destination, staff will plan ahead to ensure the appropriate assistance is provided and that no members are to be left in the vehicle alone. So if you're transporting 2 members and only one of them is exiting and requires assistance, you need to make sure you have yourself and 1 other staff to provide that assistance for that member. Lastly, if there are multiple member drop-offs, staff will check their list that was prepared before leaving the current destination to ensure the appropriate members have been dropped off. So now that we have talked about how to successfully board the vehicle and how to successfully exit the vehicle, let's talk about things we can be doing during transportation to make sure that the members arrive safely to their destination and that us as staff are succeeding in transporting them safely. First, staff will periodically check to ensure all members remain secured in their seatbelts. In the case that a member does take off their seatbelts in the middle of transport, it is okay to pull over and ask them to put their seatbelt back on. We want to make sure that we're transporting the people that we care for in a safe manner. Second, staff will periodically check to ensure the doors are locked. This is a great way to make sure that no doors are accidentally opened during transport, which, as you can imagine, might get a little bit messy. Third, staff will periodically check in with the members to see how they are doing. No one likes a long road trip that is just quiet. It's important that we are checking on our members that we care for, seeing how they're doing, if they need us to pull over so they can use the restroom, if they're thirsty. It's our job to check in on them and make sure that they're feeling comfortable and doing okay. We've talked about safely boarding the vehicle, safely exiting the vehicle, steps we need to take during transportation, but what do you do when you arrive back at the group home after dropping people off? Let's talk about arriving at your final destination while you're driving a company vehicle. So when you're finishing up transport for the day, staff will complete a swipe of the interior of the vehicle to ensure that no members remain in the vehicle and that all personal items have been removed. So this means checking the back row, checking the middle row, the front row, making sure that no people are in the vehicle still, that no important personal items are still in the vehicle. After you're done with the interior, you will complete a 360-degree inspection, so a walk around of the vehicle to note any damage. If a rock flew up and hit the windshield while you were on the freeway, if you're not sure if a car next to you opened up their door and hit the van, this is when you can verify those things and document them. So after a 360 inspection, the site manager, the house manager, will be notified immediately of any issues. Next, a written maintenance report will be completed and submitted by the house manager within 24 hours for all noted issues. Once you're finished up with your 360 walk around, staff will ensure all vehicle doors are locked. We talked about this earlier, but it's very important to lock the company vehicle doors when you're done driving it. And lastly, staff will complete the mileage log or the activity or transportation checklist. This is done at the completion of transport. In conclusion, here are some reminders and additional things that may need to be gone over with you when you're providing transportation for any of the members that you care for. First, no members are to be left in the vehicle alone. It is our job to take care of the members that we are transporting. We can't take care of the members if we are leaving them in the vehicle by themselves. Just a reminder, we cannot leave members in the vehicles alone. Second, if we are providing transportation to an individual, we need to be familiar with their transportation needs. So this means their staffing ratio when they're being given transportation, any specific seat positions that they require. So if they need to sit in the front, the back, the middle, anything like that. C, we need to be familiar with protocols specific to that member. And D, we need to be familiar with any behavioral issues that tend to occur while that member is in transport. Third, if the member that we're providing care and transportation for utilize a wheelchair, we need to make sure that we're familiar with how to use the wheelchair lift, the tie-downs, the mounted seatbelts, and the wheelchair brakes. Next, if we are providing transportation for a member who utilizes a wheelchair but does not sit in it during transportation, we need to be familiar with how to transfer that member into the vehicle. Fifth, you need to be familiar with the expectations that you need to be keeping yourself to before, during, and after transport. This could be with documenting where you are dropping off members, completing your 360 walk around, or even just checking in with members during transportation. Sixth, you need to be familiar with the equipment to have in case of emergency and the action steps to take in case of emergency. And lastly, you need to be familiar with how to identify the signs of heat-related conditions and how to respond to them. As a refresher from your first aid course, symptoms of heat exhaustion are feeling faint or dizzy, excessive sweating, cool, pale, or clammy skin, nausea or vomiting, rapid or weak pulse, or muscle cramps. And your action steps for that would be to get to a cooler, air-conditioned place, drink water if fully conscious, or to take a cool shower or use a cold compress, which you would find in the first aid kit. Symptoms of heat stroke are throbbing headache, no sweating in comparison to excessive sweating from heat exhaustion, body temperature above 103 degrees, nausea or vomiting, rapid and strong pulse, and possible loss of consciousness. If you witness any of these symptoms, you need to call 911. Thank you for taking the time to watch this training and to become familiar with Ohana Developmental Homes policies and procedures regarding transportation. After completion of this video and the quiz associated, you'll watch a short video regarding defensive driving, take one more quiz, and then you are set to become a company driver.